Good afternoon and assalamu alaikum, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, and esteemed speakers. Welcome to this crucial fireside chat, defining success for strengthening national and international cooperation to combat women trafficking. I'm honored to be the part of this session as we delve into the important pressing issue that requires efforts and global collaboration. As you all know, that human trafficking, especially the trafficking for women, is a grave violation of human rights and a global challenge that demands our attention. Today, we are privileged to have two experts, Mr. Kausar Abbas and Mr. Joseph Salavaria, who will share the insights that how we can define success in the context of combating women trafficking through national and international cooperation and coordination. So our discussion will be structured around few questions. The questions will remain same for the both speakers, but Mr. Kausar Abbas will tell us the Pakistani perspective and Mr. Salavaria will share the American perspective. I encourage our honorable speakers to engage in an open and dynamic conversation. Feel free to respond to each other's questions, share your unique perspectives, suggest suitable actions, and that can be taken to address this global issue. Let's move to our first question. How is the US government supporting or working with other countries, especially developing countries, to frame a comprehensive global strategy to find trafficking in person? So, Mr. Kausar Abbas and Mr. Salavaria, I invite you to share your insights and experiences on the collaborative efforts to address this trafficking in persons on a global scale. Yes, sir.
Good morning. Thank you, everyone. Or good afternoon. So, in order to give a little perspective on my experience in this realm of the working with different countries and expanding the partnerships and providing different awareness and knowledge base to these countries, I go back a little bit to my experience over the years working these types of investigations.
Yeah.
And much of my work involved working transnational, or you call it here, exterior trafficking, for nationals that were being brought to different countries. But then once they were there, they were then forced to be put into different types of enforced situations, whether it's commercial sex, whether it's some kind of forced labor. And the experience of having to do this type of investigative work with our foreign partners in different countries gave me insight into what some of the needs were, what some of the shortcomings were when these other countries were working these similar types of cases. So we had the ability to kind of learn from each other and find out what some of the needs were in terms of that aspect. When we would go and perform this work as agents of the US government, we didn't have the ability nor the authority to be able to go to these other countries and do this kind of work like we would in the United States. So hence, there was always an absolute necessity to have a partnership with police agencies in those countries who would assist us in pursuing the investigative work that we needed for these cases. In that aspect, a number of these investigative units were designated from police agencies from those respective governments to specifically work and assist us in terms of the collaborative work that we were doing. That helped in terms of being able to build more partnerships, and being able to understand what the needs were of these agencies and their respective countries and the type of work that they wanted to do and the challenges that they faced. One objective, obviously, was to assist in these furthering investigations. The second part of it was to foster more collaboration, global collaboration with U.S. law enforcement and these law enforcement, these international partners. The cases that I worked gave us these opportunities to build on a collaboration and to assist potentially some countries that didn't have necessarily the tools that we had at our disposal, to provide them insight and knowledge of the types of things that we were able to utilize in the field of criminal investigation to pursue tip cases, especially. Things, and it goes back a number of years, but things such as certain analytical tools. A number of years back, say telephone link analysis types of software and other types of analytical tools that were readily available to the U.S. agencies, maybe not necessarily to other agencies, but we were able to provide knowledge to them so that they knew what was out there, and then with assistance from the U.S. government and the partners, to be able to foster the ability for these law enforcement agencies to then have the ability to acquire these tools so that they themselves would be able to carry out successful investigations in their own respect.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Salavaria. So my question is same for Mr. Kausar Abbas. So, sir, what's your perspective regarding this question, that how U.S. government is supporting other countries, especially developing countries in the global
Well,
situation?
thank you, Vanita. Basically, the question is more related to U.S. participants, but I would also like to add a few things in this. I think the collaboration with the U.S. or with other developed world is very important to address the issues of trafficking in persons in Pakistan, because Pakistan is already facing like so many challenges in implementation of already existing laws. But if we talk about the trafficking in person, it's a kind of new concept in Pakistan. Recently, we are like a baby country in dealing with the issues of trafficking in persons, because recently this intervention is properly introduced in Pakistan. Recently means 2018 the legislation was made, and I think in 2021 the proper implementation was started. So there is a lot to do to implement this law, and to ensure the implementation of the best practices like US is implementing in their environment, the other countries are implementing in their culture and environment, and giving the victim relief services, giving ensuring the interdepartmental coordination, ensuring the implementation and the prosecution of the cases with all the stakeholders. So there is a need to develop a kind of international cooperation, and that's what we are basically trying to do in Pakistan as a part of civil society organization, that we are collaborating with all the stakeholders of Pakistan, bringing you all under the one roof to talk about this issue, so that we can have a collaboration within different departments as well as with the international experts, and as well as with the different countries, to get their support, to get their best practices to replicate in Pakistan.
Thank you, Mr. Kausar Abbas, for sharing your valuable knowledge and perspective regarding this question. So moving ahead to our next question.
Let me
Yeah.
just, if I could just add,
Yeah, sure.
just add one additional aspect to that.
Okay, sure.
Beyond just the scope of partnerships in terms of criminal investigation,
Mm-hmm.
one of the other aspects that I've had an extensive amount of time being able to get involved in when I was still working as an agent was with the State Departments and with my agency's training partnerships for trafficking in persons. We call it the GTIP. And as a part of that stemmed from, and it's been talked about quite a bit here during the conference, is the State Department's annual TIP report, and a lot of the analysis and a lot of the statistics and a lot of the work that goes into producing this in terms of what each respective country's situation is, depending on the circumstances, depending on their needs, and the programs that they would need to improve upon. One of those aspects was in the realm of training. So a number of these countries would express an interest or a desire to have more training, more partnership, to increase awareness and to increase the knowledge base. So in that regard, we also worked in the GT program to provide training to different countries around the world, to law enforcement and to practitioners in these respective countries. And the training was focused particularly on their individual needs, whether it was countries in Central America or South America, countries in Asia, whatever it is that they would need, that's where the training will be focused on. And it was more than just, say, lecture type training with PowerPoints. There were interactive types of trainings as well. So they had hands-on abilities, practical type of training, to become more comfortable in terms of carrying out these types of investigations, if that makes sense.
Thank you, Mr. Salavaria, for sharing your experience of the training. So moving ahead to our next question. What measures are in place to protect and support victims of trafficking in person in the United States and Pakistan? How successful are these measures in providing comprehensive assistance to survivors? This question focuses on the practical measures in both countries, Pakistan and United States, and effectiveness of support systems for victims. So Mr. Kausar Abbas and Mr. Salavaria, We look forward to hearing your perspective on this impact of these measures.
So as far as the measures and the practices are concerned, I think Pakistan, as I've already mentioned, that there is a lot to do in Pakistan because we are quite new in implementing this legislation, and even to introduce this concept among the community and the law enforcement, because people love Pakistan Penal Code. They don't they are not adopting the Prevention of Trafficking in Persons Act 2018. Now we are also saying that yes, if you want to put Pakistan Penal Code sections on any of the case, yes, you can put that, but you should additionally add Section 3 of Pakistan Prevention of Trafficking in Persons Act 2018 as well, uh, uh, because I think it's a kind of change of mindset as well, because the police people who are the first agency who to respond this to respond the citizen about the trafficking person, they have to change their mindset as well, because they are doing so many practices since so many years, and there is a need to unlearn some concepts which they are already adopting, and there is a need to adopt a concept of trafficking in person in their mindset as well, that now we have to deal this as a one of the major issue, and we have to build the deterrence in the society that this is one of the serious issue, and if we'll be finding any kind of case related to bonded labor, related to sexual exploitation, related to the prostitution, organ trafficking, or anything related to that, we'll be dealing it under the Trafficking in Persons Act 2018. So there is a need to practice that, but yes, we already have a very good law, Prevention of Trafficking in Persons Act 2018. Recently, FIA has done a very good exercise to get the recommendation from all the provinces, provincial home departments, and all the relevant departments of the provinces to amend this law, because there are so many challenges to implement this law as per the practices and the culture of different provinces. So hopefully we have a new parliament now, and it's good time to organize this conference as well, because we will be having new the National Assembly in the next 1 or 2 days, and we can advocate the amendments in the law with the new assembly as well. The other thing is, still there is a need to the Prevention of Trafficking in Persons Act 2018 is basically a victim-centered law. So, but again, there is a need to build the capacity of the local law enforcement agencies, of the local civil society organization, of the local different district level departments, to make them understand the concept of victim. Because whenever any commercial sex activity, police try to understand, try to file that case under the in that concept that if she is involved in any commercial sex, she will also be accused. So a police should not be a judgmental. They if any victim is going, even if they are involved in that case, they have to register their FIR as a victim, because maybe somebody wants to come out from this whole process. But when police deals them as a accused, then of course they don't get the support from the police department and other victim services provider, or any rehabilitation from the women protection centers. Then instead of coming out from that scenario, they will be engaging more in that scenario, and ultimately they will become leaders in exploiting the other women as well. The other thing is, there is a mechanism to provide the victim services under the rules of Trafficking in Persons Act. But unfortunately, till now, we don't have that kind of established systems or the centers. I would like to again quote here the role of Child Protection Bureau Punjab, who are already providing shelters to the children who are trafficked in the different cities of Punjab, and they have 10 centers. Rizwana case is one of the major case, which was highlighted on social media, and I think everybody has talked about that. Punjab Child Protection Bureau, they have played a very good role to provide the shelter services to the Rizwana, and now they have taken the custody of Rizwana, and also they on the other side, they have provided the health services, by the government of through the government of Punjab at the Lahore General Hospital. So this is the kind of victim services they are basically trying to provide. And as a civil society also has an important role to provide services to the victim. So we as a civil society organization, on the day one when Rizwana case happened, we collaborated with the state institutions, we sensitized the state institutions, we tried to tell them that this is a trafficking case and this should be dealt under the Trafficking in Persons Act 2018. So every state institutions, they responded to us. We launched an awareness campaign. We launched a campaign to provide the services to the victim. And finally, now Rizwana is shifted to the Punjab Child Protection Bureau under their custody. And we as a civil society organization, we are also announcing the 25-month scholarship for the rehabilitation of the Rizwana. We'll be providing monthly honorarium to Rizwana for her rehabilitation. So this is the role of civil society, which is very important to collaborate with the government as per the trafficking best practices and 2018 law. This is mandatory for the government as well to collaborate with the civil society. On the other hand, recently, as I mentioned in the opening speech as well, that we have signed an MOU with Federal Investigation Agency, FIA as well. Again, this is an initiative under Prevention of Trafficking in Persons Act, and as well as the best practices that civil society and FIA, police, and the other institutions, they are basically collaborating with each other to ensure the implementation of the law and as well as to provide the services to the victims under the Trafficking in Persons practices and the best practices and the law, which is the binding on Pakistan as well as per the international conventions.
Thank you, Mr. Kausar Abbas, for highlighting the practical measures about the people working in the field and highlighting the Rizwana case once again and the law 2018. So the same question goes for Mr. Salavaria. That's what practical measures are being done in United States and still in progress there. So please, go over to you.
So thanks for the question. So for us, the requirement, the mandate, and it was pointed out very well by Kosar, the mandate for us to provide, to the best extent possible, assistance for identified victims of trafficking has been spelled out by statute since the initial Trafficking Victims Act in 2000. So it's been mandated by law that those individuals who are identified by either law enforcement or other organizations or practitioners providing assistance to potential victims, once they're identified, they need to have assistance provided to them in some way, shape, or form. Whether it's some type of social assistance, immigration assistance of some kind, legal assistance. All of these measures are spelled out in the law. Now, truth be told, for us, it was as much of a learning curve, as much of a learning process as it has been here in Pakistan. It's not much different. From having worked these cases for many years, from the onset of the TVPA, my casework in trafficking goes back to 2002. Early on, there were a lot of areas that were still the unknown. There were things that were written in the law that needed to be fulfilled, yet we didn't exactly know how to do it. So it was trial and error in many instances. And we needed to make sure, to the best extent possible, that once we learned the most efficient and the best process for providing assistance to victims in any field, in any area that they were identified, that we ensured that this process moving forward was going to be the best one that would be available in different circumstances. So we have laws at the federal level that are anti-trafficking. In the US, we also have the 50 states. Each one of those states has their own individual state trafficking laws. One of the differences there, though, is that most of the state trafficking laws do not necessarily provide penal punishment for those who are arrested and prosecuted for them, yet they don't necessarily have a significant number of protections for victims, other than maybe some of the standard protections that those state social service organizations would have. At the federal level, it is different, and oftentimes state law enforcement, local law enforcement, when they encounter types of trafficking situations, knowing that they may be in need of providing assistance to victims, they will look to the federal partners, us, at the time, to provide assistance to them. So it took time for us as well to learn the best process, because the absolute focus when we talk of the term victim-centered is tremendously important. It's used extensively for us to be able to understand and know how best to approach the victim-centered aspect of pursuing trafficking crimes, right? Because in these instances, even though I'm speaking from the law enforcement perspective, we're dealing with a humanitarian issue, right? When we're investigating these crimes, our evidence is a human being. So unlike a drug trafficking crime, we cannot take a trafficking victim and put them in an evidence cabinet until it's time for the case to go to a judge. This is a human being that needs to be provided for, and to the absolute utmost extent possible, we had to ensure that the programs were put in place over time to provide the best assistance to them. Now, this goes much beyond just what is in the statute and what the U.S. government itself was able to provide and do. There are partnerships with non-government organizations who are most suited, most appropriate, and actually have the ability to dedicate the time and effort to provide assistance to the victims. So it's those partnerships that we have with the non-government organizations that is tremendously helpful to us. Even that, early on, was somewhat of a learning curve in terms of understanding what the relationship was between law enforcement partners and the social service organizations and non-government organizations who needed to work closely with the victims and provide assistance to them in some way, shape, or form. Much like from what I've heard over the last couple of days in certain conversations, in certain talking sessions in Pakistan and in other countries around the world as well, it's not unique, is somewhat of a still continuing misconception to some extent about the nature of the crime of trafficking, and how there's a thought that it, in most instances, if not all, some folks believe that it involves movement, or it is heavily in the area of foreign nationals who are primarily the ones who are victimized. And we see that, and because of the emphasis that this conference has put out, and many of the things that COSAR has mentioned since yesterday, is that the emphasis needs to be focused on what you refer to here as internal trafficking. In the US, we refer to it as domestic trafficking. When we even had our legislation and our laws enacted in 2000, and that law has since been changed and reauthorized 8 times since then, each time as a result of new revelations, new ideas, new thoughts on the crime to enhance the laws and enhance the services and protections that are available. One of those most prominent was we were even in the same boat early on, where a lot of the mindset fell back on, well, human trafficking. Oh, it's just a transnational issue. So the early laws really focused on providing assistance to foreign nationals that we identified as victims, providing them immigration relief, things such as temporary visas. Ultimately, they could obtain permanent resident visas in the US because of the crime that was committed against them. But there wasn't very much in the realm of those in the US, either American citizens or permanent residents, who were already living in the country and were victimized somehow through the crime of trafficking. As time went on, we developed more of a knowledge on that so that we could focus more on ensuring that the assistance that was provided and continues to be provided, I'm retired now, continues to be provided, focuses not just on those individuals who may need some type of immigration relief because of their circumstance, but also those who are citizens of that country who suffer from a circumstance of internal trafficking, or we call domestic trafficking. So the US government, last thing I'll point out, has programs, as I mentioned before, with NGOs, with partners to provide this type of assistance. And it's directed through different types of grants. And there are several government agencies that are primarily responsible for that. And it is spelled out now by statute to ensure that both protections for foreign national victims and domestic US citizen victims is of equal importance. So it took us time as well to make sure that we came on board and had a much better understanding of the broad scope of protections and assistance that are needed for victims, not just internationally, but also domestically within our own country.
Thank you, Mr. Salavaria, for sharing the practical measures that what is done in the United States and adding new information to our knowledge that what is done at the federal level and to states level. So let's shift our attention to the preventive strategies. How effective are the prevention strategies implemented to reduce the incidence of trafficking in person in the United States and Pakistan? Are there specific prevention programs or initiatives that have shown promising results? Speakers, enlighten us with your insights on the ongoing efforts and any notable successes. Mr. Kausar Abbas, you can share the Pakistani perspective.
I think I've already spoken a lot, and I would like to give a chance to my international speaker. So the ongoing efforts, as I mentioned earlier as well, that Pakistan has started a very good initiative in, taking up the civil society organizations on board now. And as a civil society organization, what we are basically doing to collaborate with all the local actors and to strengthen the role of civil society at the local intervention. And as a next step, there is a need. What SSDO is doing as a next step is that there is a need to localize this effort. Yes, SSDO is working at national level and international level, and collaborating with all the stakeholders. But we are receiving requests from every district and the local level communities and the institutions, maybe from Sindh, from Punjab, from KP, from Balochistan, from other areas. As a next step, we want to establish local actors on the issue of trafficking in persons in Pakistan. And we have already initiated coalition on combating trafficking in persons and smuggling of migrants in Pakistan. And the purpose to establish this network is that instead of going everywhere and giving intervention by SSDO, we should have local actors, local community-based organizations who will be providing assistance to the local tip committees. Because as a part of ongoing effort, the government has established a national tip committee, which is coordinating the trafficking in person issue at the national level. National Police Bureau has very important role to collect the data regarding trafficking in person cases. So similarly, we have the provincial tip committees, which are already established by the government of different provinces, and the national tip committee is basically oversighting the performance of the provincial tip committee. And then we have the district level tip committees, who are basically which are basically chaired by the deputy commissioners and the local police and the local authorities. And every committee has a role to ensure the implementation of Trafficking in Persons Act at the local level, and as well as to create awareness among the local communities about the issues of trafficking in persons. So every district committee has the mandate to include one civil society representative or two civil society representatives or the organizations in their committees as well. But unfortunately, till now, if we see the performance of provincial tip committees, yes, it is better than the district level, and they are doing a lot of efforts. The National Tip Committee has the mandate, and they are doing a lot of efforts. But at the district level, the implementation of the Trafficking in Persons Act, and as well as the functions of the district level tip committees are not up to mark, which needs to be improved. The civil society, if they are the part of the district level tip committees, they normally act as an activist at the local level to question the performance of the district level committees to ensure the implementation, and as well as to create the awareness among the local communities. So as a next step, SSDO is establishing a network of around 100 civil society, local community-based organizations to build the capacity of local community-based organizations so that they can, take part in the district level tip committee. They can question the performance of the district level committee. They can provide assistance to the district level committees. They can, raise some awareness campaigns at the local level, and they can also act as an ambassador on the trafficking in person issues, and as well as to provide the referral mechanism, referral services to the local level issues, like if any police finds any victim, as per law and as per the best practices, the civil society should come forward and they should provide the services to the victim. So that civil society organization, they will be there to provide assistance to the victim as well. So as a next step, there is a need to localize the effort. There is a need to that if any of the tip case happens in district Sakhar, there should be a local the civil society organization who can stand up and act as a service provider, act as a to provide the assistance to the government. So we are basically trying to localize these efforts to improve the performance of the district level tip committees, and as well as to create massive level awareness about the issue of trafficking in persons.
Thank you, Mr. Kausar Abbas, for sharing the preventive strategies in Pakistan. So my question is from Mr. Salavaria, that how preventive strategies implemented in United States. Please share the experience of United States and what it's been done there.
So what I want to do is follow on with the point that Kosar just made, which is very similar to what we have seen works very efficiently in the United States. And from the standpoint of local communities, the grassroots as we call it, and individuals who are most familiar with those areas, with the communities, with the people who live there, who work there, having the ability for someone or some group to have the knowledge to be able to be a partner in terms of bringing awareness and bringing familiarity to this crime for folks in that community. There's a level of trust there because the people in the community will know, they'll recognize these individuals, they'll know that they're part of the community, and thus have an understanding of this individual's knowledge of the crime and be more, you could say, believable. And the reason I say that is because even in the United States, when we have these circumstances, there are a multitude of different methods, different types of training programs that are provided to different partners around the country, whether it's civil society, whether it's the communities, or whether it's law enforcement. At the federal level, and I myself have participated in a number of these trainings, there's awareness campaigns where at the federal level, we go and teach different law enforcement communities around the country, whether it's local law enforcement, state law enforcement in the indigenous communities as well. So they have a better understanding of the concept of the crime. Beyond that, though, what we've learned, what seems to work best, is when we do have that force multiplier, and a number of the campaigns that we do have is something that we refer to as train the trainer. So we'll have individuals who are part of the communities full-time, working there, operating there, interacting there on a regular basis, to be able to provide them with the skills and with the knowledge necessary so that they themselves would be able to then turn around and provide a similar type of training and knowledge base that we've been providing to them, to then go ahead and provide that to their own local areas, their own local communities. And in that regard, that provides something where the people who are in that area are most familiar with this individual or these individuals or this group, and may become more trusting or more understanding of it because you see that someone locally, whether it's local police or local non-government organizations who are instructing them and talking to them about this crime, they have much more of an understanding of it and a believability, as I mentioned before, something we refer to as social proof, right? If the parties that are being taught about this or being discussed this topic see that it's being presented to them by someone whom they're familiar with, it increases the likelihood they'll become more comfortable with the topic and thus more likely to have an understanding of it and want to have an approach necessary to increase the awareness and the ability for they themselves to be force multipliers in investigating or referring situations that they believe are trafficking to the appropriate organizations, whether it's law enforcement and or organizations that could provide assistance to the victims. So to the point you're asking about with the question, what seems to work best for us are situations where we don't rely upon just several select entities to be designated as those who are able to provide knowledge or training or assistance, but be able to increase capacity building of local organizations, local agencies, so that they themselves can go out as well and provide assistance and knowledge based on training that we may not necessarily have the ability to do, or removing some level of skepticism because of the lack of familiarity that the local community may have with us.
Thank you, our honorable speakers, for sharing the valuable insights. Let's conclude our session with the hope to lay the foundation of defining success in strengthening national and international cooperation to combat this crime.